Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Movie Chatter. Boy, is this going to be an interesting show. For those who missed the bonus content, if you're a Patreon donor, be sure to head over to the website and check out the bonus content. We'll be posting that soon. But in the meantime, I'm Eric. I'm joined as always by Lou on my right and
Hello.
Robin on my left. Hello, both of you.
Yo, hey.
You look much more podcasty tonight.
Don't I? I'm in my own setup. Look at me. I got my own digs. Got my own digs.
Now, as long as we can actually get you in the call from now on, we'll be all set. Yeah, see aforementioned bonus content, people. We're starting a little late tonight, but that's okay because we are here. So are some of you, and if you're not and you're listening to this later, don't forget. You can join us live Tuesdays and Thursday nights. We alternate which one each week at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Join our Discord server for information on exactly when we are streaming. If you go to randomchatter.com/Discord, and we'll put the link down in the show notes below, then you will be able to join for free. Discord is free. Our server is free. And you can hang out with us there. We've got different channels that are free for each one of the shows on the Random Chatter Network. And then for those who donate through Patreon, we have some bonus. We have quite a bit of bonus stuff, actually, on the Discord server that you can join in. So anyway, that is our plug for this week. We are going to be discussing The First Purge. This is part of our October pseudo-Halloween coverage. And this is the second episode that we're doing for October 2020. Speaking of 2020, I like your background there, Lou.
Thank you.
That is so 2020
for this year. Yeah.
It kind of feels like my life right there. I like that.
This year's been interesting. So yes.
And continues to get more and more interesting. You know that right down the road from me in Virginia, they now have caterpillars that, like caterpillars, they have the little fuzzy things, right?
You're not supposed to
Some of them are little. Well, you're definitely not supposed to eat these, but they have these little like pokers on them. These are poisonous if you touch them, and they prick your skin.
Lovely.
It causes vomiting, diarrhea, nausea, and extreme anxiety. Like you think you're going to die or something. Apparently, serious, debilitating anxiety attacks.
Yeah,
poisonous caterpillars now infesting Virginia. I couldn't make this stuff up.
No, it's 2020.
It's like the writers in Hollywood are saying, "Oh my gosh, what were we thinking?" It's like,
I saw a good meme the other week that said, "What if 2020 is just the trailer for 2021?"
Oh no, don't say that.
Say that.
That wouldn't surprise me.
That's just wrong of you.
Wow.
We are
going to be covering The First Purge, which came out in 2018, but I tell you what, kind of fitting for 2020.
Yeah.
Kind of fitting for 2020. I have to say that we're going to go around and do kind of a round table like we always do, where we give our initial thoughts on the movie, spoiler free. Well, this isn't good. Lou's already yawning. You didn't even work today, Lou. How you can be tired yet? I mean, I know we started like a half hour late, but not that late.
Sorry.
This is his commentary on the movie already. The movie was really yawning.
It could be.
No.
So we're going to talk about our thoughts about the movie. We're going to keep it spoiler free, and then we are going to get into spoilers, in which we're actually going to delve into the movie and analyze it a little bit, and then we want your comments. So you can email us moviechatter@randomchatter.com, or you can hop into the aforementioned Discord server. Probably the better way to do it. But my thoughts. I thought that the concept is really interesting. And I should also point out, I have not seen any of the Purge movies. This is the first one I watched. Normally, I would go through and see all of the films in production order. But I thought because this is chronologically the first film and everybody said that this is the best of the series, I thought I'll start with this one. I like the concept and I like some of the points of social commentary in it. But as a movie...
Really?
Yeah, it was okay. Like I'm much more interested in discussing the sociological impact of the concept than I am about what I actually watched on the screen. But Lou, I'm curious as to what you thought about the movie. And then we'll come back to Robin, who actually I think was the person who. Did you suggest this, or did I? I think we kind of both jointly suggested. You had seen it.
I think we.
I hadn't, but I heard a lot of buzz about it, and so I kind of wanted to talk about it too. Yeah. So it's kind of both collectively our fault.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
Lou,
yeah.
What did you think?
So I had not seen any of the movies before. Not seen Purge movies. I wanted to. The concept sounded interesting. I was like, I want to see those movies, and then never got around to it. They had the second one, the third one, and I think this is the fourth one, right? I think so. No,
yeah.
Okay. In my experience, usually as we get along with, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, versions of a movie, they get worse and worse, almost on a logarithmic scale, really. And anytime they do a cash grab where they keep going for more movies, I'm like, nah, I'm done. I'm out. And that's kind of why I never went back and saw them. But still been interested. So you guys suggested it. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll watch this. And everybody says the first Purge is the better of the movies. And I always like to know, kind of the origin story, how things are made. And this is supposed to talk about that part of the Purge. Mm-hmm. Eric, you and I are on the exact same page.
Wow. Okay.
I did not care for the movie. I like the social commentary. I mean, I thought it was very predictable. I had it figured out within, 10 minutes of starting the movie type thing. It was no surprises for me. It was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I could have wrote this one, but.
So I'm going to say that while I really get into seeing if I can accurately predict what's going to happen in most movies, I kind of didn't even care to try. Okay. So like you're saying it's predictable, and I'm kind of saying like I didn't even bother to try to figure it out in advance.
Right.
Well, then you're going to be real upset by the next thing I'm going to say.
Okay.
There's another one
favorite
coming along
movie ever.
2021.
Another one, what? Purge?
Another Purge.
Yes, the one in 2021. It is titled tentatively. It is titled
COVID-19
Purge, the documentary.
Oh no!
The real world events of 2020.
They've got a series out now. I mean, the movies are making money, so yeah, they're going to keep cash grabbing.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Well, and because you can get just a little bit of social commentary thrown in with any iteration of it, you can always find some way to make the excuse that it's socially relevant and keep pumping out more of the same.
It doesn't mean I have to watch them. So yeah,
I don't plan to.
They can make as many as they want.
But Robin,
what'd you think?
I think this was the most fascinating one. I've seen them all.
Which then I'm glad I didn't watch the others.
I'm sorry.
Well, but they all had their own little slice of heaven, right? So there was.
I'm sorry. I couldn't hold that in. I'm sorry.
Literally putting my hand over my mouth to try to hold it in.
I'm glad I wasn't drinking my beer when you said that.
Right.
So there was the 2013 film called The Purge, right? And that is more of a SES sort of commentary, socioeconomic class kind of commentary. And then there was The Purge Anarchy, SES, socioeconomic class.
Okay. I'm slow. You got to spell things out for me.
Yeah.
And then there's the Purge election year, which was in 2016.
Maybe we should watch that one because this is an election year. So that maybe would have.
But the thread comes through with the founding fathers. I think it's called the founding fathers.
The FFA. So that's the political
George
party
Washington?
that's in the movie.
The FFA. Yes. Oh. And so, so they're there in the background. Purge election years brings them to the fore, and then you've got the first Purge, which is what we all watched together apart, and it really tried to sort of take you back to its initial spirit and intent, which actually is probably the best social commentary of all of them. It's timely, it's relevant. So even though they had to move backwards in franchise time, they kept it very relevant to today's climate, I believe. And so for me, it was a successful movie. I agree with you both. I think it was predictable, but that kept me watching. Interestingly enough, the predictability kept me watching. And I cared about these characters a lot more than I've cared about any of the characters in this series. Don't look at me that way, Eric.
So,
what, confused? I don't know how else to look right now.
I'm confused too, but so the caring about the characters. I mean,
there were a couple of characters, kind of, yeah.
But I mean, it's like, we had the kid, the young kid that got, I don't know, whatever. He wasn't a bad kid, but he was trying to break into the bad kid lifestyle, and he got cut by Skeletor. Was that the guy's name?
Skeletor.
Yeah.
And then right away he had rage to go after this guy, and I'm like, okay. And they had some flashback stuff showing when they were being interviewed by the people starting the experiment. But I wasn't sure on the timing of when those were starting and when that was, when it happened. It seemed like he had rage before he was actually cut by the guy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But and that made me care for him. But I mean, I already knew from the beginning. I'm like, okay, he's not going to be able to go through it. He's not going to be able to participate in the purge. He's going to be the good, clean cut kid that he really is. And he's going to be put in harm's way, and that's going to be the main part of the story. It just didn't seem like there was any kind of. The only thing that was maybe a little bit of a surprise for me was the government guy and the way they outed themselves. They're really. Yeah, we're getting spoilers. I know. I'm sorry.
We'll go ahead and do spoilers at this point because.
But when he comes out and says, "Yeah, no, we're rigging this thing." I'm like, okay, that was kind of a surprise. I wasn't sure they're going to go there, but it wasn't a surprise like, oh my God. It was kind of plausible that would happen.
And I imagine if you've seen the other movies, it might not have been a big surprise.
Right.
No.
Probably.
Right. Because there is that underlying manipulative tone of the FFA and FFA in all of the, who the villain is in all of the purges. But I liked the way it came out. I like the insidiousness of it, and the tapping into a rage that naturally exists, and then exploiting that. I mean, if you're gonna do an action horror film, which is what this is depicted as, it was a lot less horror for me because they were tapping into something that most horror taps into something that we all have, but it was a little less, what's the word I'm looking for? It was a little less.
Well made. Oh, that's 2 words.
It's 2 words. That's funny. In my hearing test today, I had to do a test with 2 words, 2 syllable words and 1 syllable words, and then 2 words. And yeah, anyway, so Eric's just tapping into my grief. So for me, it's not Akira Kurosawa. It's not Alfred Hitchcock. It's not.
Nope.
But
not even Michael Bay.
Okay, it's that rainy Saturday afternoon. Okay.
It's that rainy Saturday afternoon when you can't find your phone, and you put this on, and then 10 minutes into it, you realize I really should try to find my phone. And then you find your phone and the movie's over and you're like, I guess I didn't really miss anything after all.
You could watch The Greatest Showman again with me.
I would
I'd watch that.
Robin. I would. Everybody, just real quick. See, you guys who aren't watching the video, you're missing a lot of facial expressions here. I would rather watch The Greatest Showman. You will almost never hear me say this in my life than that movie.
Right. Wow.
But there's a lot of interesting social discussion to be had about the concept. I just felt like the execution of it was horrible. So here's my take on this. There was no compelling protagonist to follow. There was no real character journey. The antagonists were kind of your cookie cutter. Now, I get that there's a larger franchise behind this. And so this is them going back and giving backstory to people who exist in the franchise, or an organization who exists in the franchise already. And so people who are new to it, me coming in and watching this, I might not care about the FFA going into it, but I didn't get, like, I get it. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yet another corporate machine trying to manipulate things. We've seen it a million times before. And so I'm watching the protagonist. You got the kid you were talking about, Lou, and I kind of get that. Kids in this sort of environment. And this is one thing I think the movie did do well to an extent. Kids in this sort of environment, they don't have a lot of ways to escape that. You hear a lot of people talking about, well, why don't they just go out and get a job? And why don't they just pay attention in school and get an education? That's not really how that world works. And the rest of us, like the three of us, we didn't have to go through that. And I grew up not really well-to-do at all. I wasn't probably even aware when I was a kid of how not great we were doing, but I didn't have to go through that. So I had privilege, at least in that way. And that is a really cutthroat dog-eat-dog type of world where you do have to kind of put on a front to survive. You can't back down. You can't get steamrolled by the people in the community around you, et cetera, et cetera. When the guy came up, I mean, he had to kind of try to go into that lifestyle because he didn't have any other way out. And when he did get his throat cut, he had two options: to take it, which then puts him like way down on the pecking order, which is not a good way to survive, or he had to try to step up and prove himself to be somebody as a survival skill. And so there's that whole aspect of that part of the social structure that I get. However, we got just this little sliver of him and a little sliver of the church community and a little sliver of the drug runner guy who is supposed to kind of be a good guy, and he's protecting his community. He's also destroying his community, but he's trying to protect that which he gets to control.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so I felt like the character development was broken across so many different areas that we didn't really get to watch any of the characters really develop. And it's only a 24-hour period for them to develop anyway. And honestly, they're doing the same thing through most of that 24-hour period. I thought the only interesting character was the drug runner guy, the gang leader. I did like certain moments where they were talking about the fact that, I mean, there were a lot of people in this community who were doing good who would otherwise be stereotyped. And there were people who were trying to protect what they had and trying to protect one another. And there was a lot of examples of solidarity and things that should be protected. So again, a lot of social commentary. The storytelling, though, I thought was uninteresting. It was boring. The execution of it was not great. There were a couple of good fight scenes, and there were a couple of, like, the block party scene with Skeletor stabbing a couple of people and stuff. I thought, okay, that's predictable, but it's an interesting way to do it.
They never really developed. They never really developed that storytelling point. It was like it was one and done. It was over. Like, okay, we're moving on to the next point, but there wasn't much to it.
Yeah.
What made me, when I thought about watching the movie, was I thought this felt like a movie set in today's time. So the social economic issues were kind of relevant to today. But the storytelling and the way they did the filming and the action felt like an 80s movie to me.
Yeah. Maybe early 90s.
Very 80s, very, or late 80s, early 90s, because it was very much about the action and not about the substance. And I'm like, okay.
But I like, and this is my drawback with the other movies. I didn't like the depth of character because they were taking characters to depths that I didn't care about. If I'm going to watch an action horror, what is this? Action horror thriller? I don't know. There's probably a bit of time travel in there too.
No. Let's not sully the time travel subgenre here. Let's keep that clean.
But if I'm going to watch an action horror film, then I don't want to see love affairs. I don't want these characters, amazingly well developed. I'm watching it for, and oh, by the way, Michael Bay was one of the producers. I'm watching it for,
That's what I get for not reading IMDb before agreeing to watch something. That was a joke earlier when I said I'd rather watch a Michael Bay movie than this.
I just thought I'd share.
You just brought Michael Bay down to a whole new level for me, and that's impressive. I got to give you props for that, because not everybody can do that with me on Michael Bay.
Dance. But you know what? It was what it was, and it's kind of refreshing to have a movie just be what it is. It's non-horror-ish horror for those of us who are weak stomached and want to sleep at night.
No, it wasn't horror. There's this. No, it's not horror. I can't call it.
No.
What does it have it on IMDb as?
But it's not horror.
Action, horror, sci-fi. Sci-fi. I mean, sci-fi is a stretch. They had contact lenses that also showed video back to the main building. That's about as sci-fi as this got. I mean, that's like calling this sci-fi is kind of like calling The Martian best comedy of the year. Remember the Golden Globes?
Oh, yeah.
This is not it. I have a hard time calling it horror only because it doesn't really fit into any other genre. And really the horror element to me is just more that this is frighteningly close to being possible.
Yes.
Which really is the only compelling thing about this whole franchise.
Good horror is good. I believe good horror is always frightening close to being possible.
Mm-hmm. That's what makes it more scary, right?
Right. Bad horror is,
this.
Shh.
If you're going to pause that long, you are inviting me to finish your sentences for you, Robin.
I know.
Sorry.
I know. That's okay. So this yes, the storytelling was weak. Yes, the horror wasn't exactly horror, but it gave you what it needed to give you, and I think it was so very well done, so much more well done than the other movies. Now, I don't know that I'm going to run out to see the next one, the Forever Purge, but you never know. I think we sort of ran across this.
Is that what they're calling it? The Forever Purge?
It's called the Forever Purge. 2021 is when it's coming out.
Do they have a plot synopsis?
Yes.
I only care in the sense that
this will be the last in the series.
Okay.
This is a bright spot.
So they're going to purge the FFA.
James DeMonico, who directed the first ones, produced this one, says, I think I'm going to write it. I think it's a great way to end it all. We want to end it all.
I certainly do after watching this one.
And I'm very excited. So this is not as much of a plot synopsis as it was. It says, when I came up with the idea and pitched it to everybody, they seemed psyched. And I think it would be a really cool ending.
Hey, everybody,
so there's your plot
let's
synopsis.
Not make any more of these after this one. And everybody said, oh, we agree on that.
But it is delayed indefinitely.
Also okay with that.
What is happening currently. So, which might take us into 2021.
Which also might destroy the entire writing and everything, because I think that there are many things in this movie that are hitting a little too close to home, especially after this year. And it would not surprise me if whatever they've gotten written so far, they end up going back and doing a complete rewrite on it out of certain sensitivities to actual real world violence going on.
Different endings because of things like that. Right?
Yeah. That's sort of stuff that's happened before. We've had movies delayed back when 9/11 happened. They took the Twin Towers out of the second Spider-Man movie.
Right.
There were all kinds of different things. In fact, the Twin Towers appeared in a teaser trailer for the second Spider-Man movie where he shot webbing across the two towers and caught a helicopter with bad guys that were flying by. Yeah, we've seen sorts of things like that before. And Brooklyn Nine-Nine, sitcom set in New York City following a bunch of cops. they had to go back. They had written the first 4 or 5 episodes for the upcoming season. And they said, we have to throw them completely out because being a police officer in a major urban city right now, like, it's a completely different experience. And there's a lot of it that's just simply no longer funny. So yeah, it would not surprise me if the movie either gets scrapped entirely or rewritten from the ground up. But let's go back to this for a minute. So I said I didn't really care for the movie itself. Lou, you agreed. Robin, you seem to maybe have similar thoughts, but at least didn't mind it. But we all agree that the concept is interesting, and the events in the movie, the portrayal of things in the movie, I thought were interesting. To me, so there's a lot of different layers here. So looking at the psychology of it, and then we'll talk about the sociology of it. There is a certain theory in psychology that if you have ways to vent frustration, then you don't bottle that frustration up and then misdirect it on to things where it doesn't belong, most often other people. So this goes back to the simple concept of punching a pillow, which other people argue that is a gateway of sorts, because if you're punching a pillow and you get used to doing that physical action, at what point do you carry that into punching an actual person? Though I'm being told studies show the opposite. But so that's kind of a thing. Video games. That's been a contentious point for a long time. And then there have been studies that say expressing violence through video games has been shown to cause it to be less likely to show violence actually in person. Though, again, there's a lot of debate on that. So there has been a discussion going on for a long time about the adverse effects of keeping frustration pent up. And then if you're living in an environment where, and I don't know that much about the settings of the other films, but this one is obviously in a very urban environment. When you're living in an environment where you're surrounded by gangs and, low rent housing and limited job opportunities, limited educational opportunities, you're stuck in a microcosm that is very difficult to get out of. Your whole life is nothing but frustration and violence anyway. I mean, they're talking about the purge being one day, and yet one of the main characters, another character points out, you're destroying your city the other 364 days of the year. Sure. This is just it's a violent world they live in already.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it. And then the sociological aspect of it, where we actually see people band together in this to protect, in some cases, their sub-communities, and in other cases, a greater community at large. And then finally, we also see there's a little bit of racial commentary here, but I think whatever it says is brought into question, at least by the fact that we don't actually. So we see people driving through the streets in like KKK garb with machine guns and stuff like that. But we find out that they're actually mercenaries who were hired to bring in to kind of stage this escalation in violence for a bigger audience of the nation. It's not actual white supremacists and stuff like that. It's people that were hired to wear costumes to incite more violence. So like any commentary on that, I feel, is kind of lost.
Well, let me ask one thing, because one thing I was a little bit unsure about that was at one point they said that they brought these teams in because the violence wasn't escalating fast enough.
Correct.
Right.
And then I was also in the impression that they brought these teams in because they wanted to get rid of some of the bad elements effectively.
Well,
so was it both?
I think it was both.
They wanted to purge the ghettos of the poor people, actually, no matter what race.
And I think they thought so, Lou. I think what happened was they thought they would take each other out. Like if there are two guys in a room and I'm only one guy, and I want to kill one of the two, if I can get them to fight themselves, then when I go into the room, there's only one guy for me to fight because the other guy's dead. Sure. So I think their point was, if the population can kill off a good portion of its own, we have less mess to clean up, but they didn't.
Okay.
So that caused a problem. So they went with plan B, which was to bring people in to clean out, to drain the swamp, so to speak.
Clean it out.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the actual execution of the movie that wasn't handled very well because it was a really small part they added in. And arguably, that's the most interesting part of this movie. I mean, I thought that the psychological implications of doing this purge are fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, this is not a psychological movie really per se, but if they went in that direction with this and gave us some in-depth discussion about what they were trying to accomplish, or what the doctor, because the doctor was separate from the NFFA, whatever it is.
FFA.
She was separate from them. It was her plan to do this, and not the way they had, co-opted it, on for their own purposes.
Yeah.
Robin, it looks like Robin's going to say something.
Yeah, she came to it from the purely bonyhead academic, theoretical perspective. Like, in theory, this is what we should see. When she wasn't seeing it, from my perspective, she was pleasantly surprised, and then, of course, became a victim of the very same organization who hired her to set this stage.
Right. She was being manipulated too. Not innocent, but
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that, I don't know. I think that this movie got some good conversations going, but if we look back at 2020 and a little bit before then, we've got people driving cars through protesters, let's be more specific, and not just one time. We've got shootings that seem to be on the rise. We've got the plot to kidnap a governor based on
two governors.
What was the second one? Michigan and where else?
I forget, but there was two governors. They announced the other one tonight. Yeah.
Because of differences in political opinions. And I'm not making any comment on one side or the other here. Because maybe the other one's the other political party. I didn't know about the second one. So there are so many different things going on right now. We're having serious discussions about militia people potentially showing up at voting booths to intimidate people away from showing up because of historical and recent clashes between those people in the militias and the people that they're very vocal against. We've got accusations of a president making rally cries to hate groups. Whether he did or didn't, it's a discussion that's being had. There's a lot going on right now that looks a lot like it was made for this movie. Like, there's just, there's a lot of groups who are taking a very isolated stand about their own little subcommunity, who are vocalizing violence and or threats against other groups, and violence is starting to take place, and it's almost like a little, it's not even like there's a Cold War going on. It's like there's several simultaneous Cold Wars going on all over the United States right now on both sides. And I'm not trying to make this a political commentary here. I'm saying that it's, from a sociological comment, it's kind of frightening, and it reflects a lot of the stuff in this movie. And it's interesting.
And that's what these guys do. These guys, DeMarco does really well, right? So if you think about Purge election year, it was 2016, right? They were picking up on, the movie picked up on all of the little small and large conversations that were happening and brought them all to the screen. This is what this movie did 2 years ago. And it was done in a way that's palatable. There wasn't ever a moment where I felt like I was being preached to. There were moments when I wanted people desperately to rise to the occasion, and sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't. But the other brilliant thing about this was there was no kumbaya moment. The spoiler ahead, the folks in the church, held up in the church, they were gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
They completely massacred. And that is a hard thing to watch. And when you're thinking about who are the ones that you want to survive, most folks go to, we want those folks held up in their church who are, trying to do good for their community to survive.
Right.
But we never really came back to that either. I mean, that was the point that I thought was going to be I thought we were going to have almost like a stand off at the church, and we never got that. It was like there was some build-up points that I thought, okay, this is going to be a good point of good versus evil and kind of who is where and who's on what side of the equation. And that never developed.
Right. It was predictable that even if they had, though, Lou, I mean, it's kind of a trope that they all would have just been slaughtered. Anyway, because in movies like this, if you have a peaceful group of people that you feel connected to, well, two things. Number one, peaceful characters don't belong in a movie like this, frankly. And number two, by killing off people that the audience cares about, yet haven't invested personally in, it raises the stakes for the audience. So you always do that. There are some rules. You never kill the dog in a movie.
Well,
almost never.
Wick.
Old Yeller,
John Wick.
John Wick, and I Am Legend. Those are the only three I can think of off the top of my head. Any others? Yeah, see, it's that rare, people. However, in an action movie or horror movie, people gather in a church, they're all dead. Every time.
So, interesting enough, we got 56% in Rotten Tomatoes.
And a 5.2 stars out of 10 on IMDb.
So everybody's got this middle of the road kind of.
Which is funny because I'd heard so many things about it indicating people seem to like it. And then I watch it and then I'm looking at the ratings online and I'm like, oh, well, that should have been a red flag. Maybe not.
But in context, what they're saying is of the Purge movies, this is the best one.
I wish I had the context first.
I told you that. Come on.
Yeah, you did. Listen, I wanted to see them anyway because the concept is so fascinating. The idea that you can do whatever you want for 24 hours, not just this first movie or the first Purge movie, but going all the way back to the initial film, the concept, the one thing that keeps us from, there are two things that keep us from being utterly selfish in our lives. One is a more mature understanding, a domesticated understanding that we need the community that we live in, that none of us can survive just on our own on a deserted island. We need our community. And the second thing is laws. Well, more specifically, the consequences if we break those laws, right? So when you take those consequences away for a 24-hour period, the number of people who would just go out and do anything they want with zero consequence. I mean, you have to, when you hear the concept, everyone has got to be stopping and thinking, wow, number one, what could I get away with? And number two, would I actually do it? Would I actually go through with something? Maybe not killing someone or assaulting someone. Maybe just like, I don't know, breaking into an old elderly home and stealing some jewelry or robbing an ATM, because that's a victimless crime, right? The banks are insured, FDC, blah, blah, blah. Big deal. I steal $200. You know, I got a car payment next week. And you start to wonder, would I do any of those things? And then finally, on the following day, could I live with myself if I had done that? So there are some really compelling questions about the very concept here. And I appreciate that about the series. I just feel like it failed as a movie. This would have made a good book. We don't say this very often. We talk about books that make good movies, movies that make good TV shows that would have made better movies, but we don't really hear it the other way around that much. I think this movie, maybe the entire franchise, would have made a good book.
Kind of repetitive.
How so?
Because it's the same movie in a different context with slightly different social commentary over and over.
Well, I haven't seen the other movies.
Yeah.
So I can't.
I mean, the concept is the same.
Okay.
The purge happens. It's just your characters change.
Well, then what makes the movies any better. Like if that's the reason, then don't make any more movies either. I mean, it's the same logic.
They're only going to make one more.
Yeah.
Just one more.
Hey, Eric,
just one more.
We've gone first circle.
Yeah. We can never have too many Skype accounts, Lou. I'm going to make just one more.
Just one more.
I think that though, making the franchise or whatever into a book or even a series of books if people like them, whatever, but you would have an opportunity to give better character development to multiple characters, dive a little bit more into some of what makes the movie interesting. Because right now, what made the movie interesting has almost nothing to do with the story and just more about the snapshots that we see in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, now, and speaking of the psychological portion of this, has there been any studies done on these? I don't even know what they're called. They're, de-stressing rooms where you can go and just break stuff.
There have been, I don't know about those specific rooms, but those sorts of techniques. Yeah, there have been studies. I'm not well read on them, but I know they exist.
Right. Because it's not purge thing where anything is legal, but you pay yourself $50 whatever it is, they give you all the protective gear you want and a baseball bat, and you go into a room and break TVs and destroy cars and all kinds of stuff.
It's the scene of them breaking the printer in Office Space.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need a room for that. You just go get your laser printer, you take it out in the backyard or the parking lot of your building, right? I mean, who hasn't done that?
Right.
Anger. They're called anger rooms.
Yeah.
Anger rooms. There you go.
So I know that studies have been done. I don't know if there is a particular agreement. Is it the American Psychology Association? I don't remember the kind of the governing organization for that, but I don't know if there's an overall consensus or not. But I know that there is a school of thought that believes very much that as long as you are properly able to identify this is an inanimate object, and I'm doing this specifically just as a way to kind of vent out that adrenaline and everything, many consider it to be, if not acceptable, or if not mentally healthy, then at least acceptable. They think it's an okay thing to do. There are also people with a differing opinion feeling that that is a gateway to teaching you that releasing any sort of frustration through any sort of physical flailing, we'll call it, leads to cases where you might be overcome and without thinking do it against another person. And then there are people, there's a school of thought that thinks, it can be a gateway for those who are not otherwise perfectly mentally healthy because of other reasons. And that maybe it's okay for some people and not for other people. Studies have been done. I don't know what the results are. I've heard both sides from people in the industry that, But if nothing else, this makes for a really fascinating concept. I mean, obviously the concept is hyperbole, right? It's an exaggeration of, we're never going to see a point where we are allowed without consequence to legally go and do whatever we want for a 24-hour period. However, we're getting dangerously close to people just doing it anyway. We've had people just do it anyway. We're getting closer, I think, to groups of people just doing it anyway.
There's a lot of that going on where there's just no consequences for what people do, or at least not the same consequence that would have been, say, 10 years ago.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah.
And then there are arguments that certain people in certain groups are protected from consequences based on various things. So
don't forget, this is the Twitterverse, sort of all over again. In that world, you can say whatever you want to say. And, only in egregious examples are you taken off of those platforms.
Right.
But I got to say, I live in a democracy. I'm a huge defender of free speech. So I think we in the United States walk that fine line often.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope.
Just don't shoot people. Come on.
Well, I haven't yet.
Well, that's true. And I only had to pull your monitor off the screen once today, and it wasn't even during the actual show.
I know.
So
see, that was like amazing. He, folks in the audience, he all capped texted me. Eric texted me in all caps. I just want to say
twice in a row. The first one was ARG with about 27 exclamation points after it, and then the next sentence was, you have multiple Skype accounts. That's why you can't log in.
To mirror the amount of Skype accounts I have, yes. That's why they were calling some phantom, right?
But see, people, that's kind of a good example of what we're getting here. Don't, like, when you get frustrated, talk it out and
don't all caps.
Deal with it. In all caps, if you have to, that's fine. Don't shoot people. I mean, I get that we're talking about something here that has nothing to do with, like, the crippling circumstances that people have in their lives that prevent their lives from being prosperous and et cetera. I mean, we're talking apples and oranges here, but I hope that by the time my son grows up, we will maybe be able to revert back to being in a world where people of dissenting opinions can sit down and discuss the opinions and discover that they have a shared, zoomed out goal. At least they want the world to be a better place. They might have a very different perspective on what steps have to be taken to get there, or even what a better place means. But too often it seems like we have people who genuinely want things to be better, but they disagree so emphatically with the other side. They stop listening to the other side. They've forgotten how to compromise, how to work out problems, how to actually troubleshoot things. And it's just this constant civil war by people who at their core at least agree that they want things to be better than they are now. Progressively making things worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I'd like to go back, like when I was growing up, even in politics, you had people yelling and screaming and stuff. But at the end of the day, like behind closed doors, when they didn't have an audience and a stage anymore, they sat down and they compromised and they gave and took a little. Like, okay, I'll give you a little here. I'm going to take a little there. We're going to come up with a plan and we move forward. And now it's just like hate all the time. And so this movie, what makes this a horror movie, again, is that this is dangerously close to becoming a reality, with the minor exception of government endorsement.
So this movie also answers for me. I don't know about anybody else out there. In the other Purge movies, there is a preponderance for those who will go out and do whatever they feel like to don masks. And I never quite figured that out, because the deal, the devil's deal here is, for however many hours, 12 to 24 hours, you can go out and do whatever you want. And at the end of that, once you stop, there's complete amnesty. Nobody is being prosecuted for these crimes.
So why wear a mask?
Well, the answer is in this movie, because they were bringing in ostensibly white mercenaries into black neighborhoods, because the whole deal with this movie was black neighborhoods were supposed to turn on, black and Latino neighborhoods were supposed to turn on each other.
Right.
And this was Staten Island. Come on, this took place on Staten Island, right? And so the idea is the island was then going to become cleansed. And to, whatever, flourish again. And so they had to hide the identities of the people who were being trucked in specifically to incite
because even though
violence.
There wouldn't be government retribution, there could be by other people in the population afterwards. Is that the argument? Like if I saw their face 3 weeks from now, I might find them in a dark alley somewhere and beat them up.
Yeah. This is how Dimitri and his gang figure out who these people are, right? They slaughter the Dimitri's gang gets slaughtered and Dimitri figures out these people are not us. These people don't live here. They are coming from someplace.
Right. But why would that be?
So
I'm seriously trying to understand this. Why would that be relevant when the whole nation can do it? Then
they can't. Not in this movie.
Right. But then how does that?
Just Staten Island,
right. But how does that cover over into the next movies where they wear masks? Like, I understand why they wore masks in this movie. Going back to the others where it's a nationwide thing, if there's no consequence, why would you wear a mask? Like, it still doesn't answer that question for me.
It's a holdover. It's a holdover, right? So it was just a holdover from this movie, because I also question that. Like, why are all these people wearing masks? You know? And so this at least started to answer that question for me. But then there was the Mardi Gras atmosphere. I mean, there was the party atmosphere. So for a lot of residents of these neighborhoods, this was an opportunity just to go out, drink, have a great time, and not get caught doing that, right? And so the other movies were a little bit devoid of the party type of atmosphere. And there was a fair amount of crossing of the lines, right? So whereas the nation was at risk, there was a fair amount of Black folks going into wealthy white neighborhoods and purging, doing the purge that sort of that way. When the original Nexus was supposed to be sort of, held in the container of poor working class neighborhoods.
Right. It was supposed to be a form of racial cleansing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and so I get that aspect of the story. The mask thing, I guess to me, I always assumed in the other movies they wore masks because, like, if this happened for real and I go break into my neighbor's house and steal all his stuff, I mean, he can't call the cops. He can't legally have any retribution against me for that. But that doesn't mean that 6 weeks later, he's not going to accidentally set my house on fire somehow. Like, there would still be, but if I wore a mask, he would never know it was me who did it. So even if there's no legal consequences, again, we still live in a society. We still live in a larger community, and smaller communities within that. People still know you. And even if you're not going to be legally held responsible, you're going to get the crap beaten out of you repeatedly, regularly, if somebody recognizes you as being someone that victimized them. Yeah. That's why I always assumed they wore the masks in the other movies. This movie had more specific reason for it, obviously. All right. Is there anything else we want to say about this movie before we move on? We're coming up on the hour point.
We just want to reinforce that it is a Blumhouse production, and Michael Bay was one of the producers.
That just doesn't surprise me now. It explains so much. So much.
I just wanted to share.
We didn't really talk about the acting, the directing. I didn't have any problem with any of the acting, really.
It was okay.
I thought it was fine, and I thought
nothing special.
Yeah, and the directing was fine. I thought the action scenes were done well. The shots were framed well. I guess to me it was just really the writing. The writing was really strong in concept. It was not strong about either the story or the characters. So, the directing and the acting was fine.
Yeah.
So just wanted to throw that out.
The director isn't incredibly known to me. It was a different director than directed the other ones. James DeMonaco did not direct this film.
Did he direct the others?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He wrote and co-produced it, and he is writing the next one, but I don't know.
So he's the original writer.
Named a director. Yeah.
And the original director.
He is the original writer.
Okay. And again, this is a movie that the interesting thing about it always was the concept. And so I think they nailed that. It's sad that the rest of the ride through the film just didn't hold up as well. But anyway, moving ahead for the continuation of October, We had talked about doing Happy Death Day. Do we still want to do that? Yet another Blumhouse production?
It's up to you guys. I'm going to let you gents direct me.
I would be okay covering it.
I'd be fine with that. I've never seen it, so I'd be fine with that.
I think that there's, it's fun, it's different, and I think that different is good, and I think it's the type of movie that people could watch if you're not really into horror movies, and you at least wouldn't be bored all the way through the whole thing. I think that there is a different level it operates on there. And I think that people might like hearing about it. I don't know. I'm okay with that.
Is there such a thing as bubblegum horror? Can I do a subgenre?
That is such a sexist comment, Robin. You can't talk about college girls who are like cute and blonde and cheerleader types and stuff like that and associate like bubblegum labels to them like that. That's sexist, Robin.
No one heard me say girls. I said bubblegum. Have you ever heard that phrase, bubblegum for your brain? Like you just want to sit down and not just watch something that's just...
Is that an old thing, Lou? I don't ever chew bubblegum while I watch things.
Whoa. Just because I have 10,000 Skype accounts to go along with Lou's 64 cats.
You don't make a new one every episode, Robin. You don't have... We have a new file every episode. You don't make a new account every episode. Is that what she's...
You always get that wrong.
Get that
wrong. Oh.
Where is Tim when you need him?
Oh, he's lurking in the background.
Yeah, Tim's off recording something else. Traitor.
Yeah.
All right. So
he's a busy man.
Well, that is very true. Going to be very busy on that vacation you guys are all doing without me.
Lou.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, look at that. There's
I
the Eeyore
I don't
face.
need a vacation. My life is awesome.
There's our Eeyore. He's come out to play.
Thanks for noticing me. You know, that was always my favorite Winnie the Pooh character.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Eeyore, he's awesome. Poor little guy just takes life as it comes to him and just gets through it no matter what. Well, no, because you've got the Skype filter thing. It keeps popping in and out, which is, you've got a perfectly fine, nice background to your home anyway. I don't know why you're doing the layering thing because then it looks like you're ghosting in and out.
I don't know why.
It's like, I have a dog. I have not a dog. The dog is here. The dog is gone. It's like one of those Old Spice commercials with Isaiah, what's his face? I'm on a horse. I'm in a boat. The boat is on a horse. And it just keeps changing every...
There she is.
Yeah, you have a flickering dog with no head and no ears. And now she's there. Aw, kisses and everything. Look at that.
It's a baby.
Aw.
Hello, people.
Hello. Goodbye. That's it for this episode of Movie Chatter. See us next week when we will be discussing Happy Death Day, which I think... so it's playing on FX. I know because I saw a commercial for it. We were watching The First Purge. And I think it's also available now on Amazon Prime Video or Netflix, one of the two.
Okay.
I forget which.
I can't remember how we watched it.
Yeah. So I think I have it through iTunes. I don't know. I think it was on sale at some point and I picked it up.
So we have another co-host here.
Yes, but she's not saying much. Apparently she did not care that much for the movie.
She's going to get her own Skype account. So
that does not surprise me. Lou, it hurts.
Oh boy.
Okay, well, that's going to do it. Thanks for tuning in with us, everybody. Thanks for listening to the show, or if you're watching in YouTube, thanks for doing that too. If you haven't already, if you liked the episode, hit the subscribe button. If you hated the movie, we didn't make the movie. You can still hit the subscribe button, and you can still like the video here on YouTube without liking the movie. It's okay. So click the like button too. Yeah. Stick around the channel and check out some of the other shows from Echo Base, Random Chatter. I talked to Lila. We're going to be doing another episode of the Story Crucible pretty soon. Apparently, she watched some YouTube video by someone who she follows a lot and it's really popular. And they were talking about how science fiction is good because it's forward looking. And then she said fantasy was bad because it's always looking back and never going anywhere. And Lila went off So she wants to talk about it, and I can't blame her. Though I inevitably am going to have to play devil's advocate and take the sci-fi side of it. So it'll be interesting. But anyway, we have a lot of stuff here on the YouTube channel. We've got more coming soon. And don't forget to go to randomchatter.com to check out all of our other great podcasts from a lot of different hosts. We've got a lot of great stuff on the network. So stay tuned. See us next Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, which is GMT -5. And we will be back at you next week. And until then, watch Happy Death Day and take care, everybody.